I just want to say a massive welcome and thank you to all that are here to attend this event as well, as we're here to talk about driving diversity and DEI into the technology world as well.
A massive thank you to everyone who's here as guests. A massive thank you to all of our panelists as well, which we'll kind of go through and introduce at the same time. And essentially, we're here to develop in the betterment of, yes, we're here from a business perspective and a technology perspective, but I think this has got a much wider reaching array as well when we talk about general society, especially so much as what we're seeing in the mainstream media and the news and everything right now as well. A topic to bring people together, I think, is vitally important in this country right now as well. So, without much ado, I just want to say a massive welcome. I'll kind of start on that side as very brief introductions. We've got Jennifer Barker. I've got a few long titles here. So, Head of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging for the UK and Ireland at DHL. So, thank you, Jennifer. We've got Kevin Cooper, who's Managing Director for a business called EnableAll. So, thank you for your participation as well. In the middle, we have Megan Brooks, who's HR Manager from the INKEY list. And we have Usman Niazi, who is Head of Site Reliability Engineering and Site Operations Engineering for Dunelm Technology. Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Leanne Orton, who's Senior People Partner from Dunelm Technology, whose brainchild this was. And a massive thank you.
I don't know why now.
But thank you for participating in the conversation as well. But also a massive thank you to Dunelm Technology for providing us the space, the professional setup that we've got, and helping us to facilitate this conversation as well. So we'll try and make it as conversation as possible. I think the aim of this is for us to come out of this today with as many kind of takeaways as we can get from this, as many practical implementations we can take from this that might help improve things in our own businesses or wherever we're going back to as well. We've got some questions. Some will be at some. I'll go with all as well. But before that, thought we'd just start with some introductions and a bit more depth from a personal perspective as well. So Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind, if we could start with you.
Yeah.
Just a minute or two on an introduction from you.
Yeah. Of course. Hi, everybody. So I have worked for DHL for 8 years now. And prior to that, I worked for Tesco for 17 years. All in logistics and all in a number of different roles. So I've had a very lateral career where I've worked in HR and operations. I ran a depot for 2 years. I've implemented systems. I've implemented a health and safety programme to support people with changing behaviour and mindset around how they would be looking after themselves and how they looked after others. And then within DHL, I've worked with customers from an account perspective, looking after accounts from an HR view with a direct team, to implementing a new HR system that we did over the last 2 years. And then latterly, I think they're trying to find and just move me into whatever role they can't need to find me. I mean, maybe they're struggling to know where to put me, but I was asked to take over the head of DEIB within the business. And I was saying to my team on Tuesday, I've got a kind of dotted line team. I don't have many people who report to me directly, which might kind of topic of conversation about how we move forward with DEIB going in the future. But I kind of felt like when I was offered the job that it sort of was kind of somebody's actually found the role that I should have been in from my 30 years within logistics, because it's a topic I'm incredibly passionate about, that I really like to use practical solutions for. I think people are very scared of this topic because they're not quite sure what to do with it. But actually, we're dealing with people. And how do you deal with people can actually be very simple and very practical. And that's, I guess, what I want to bring to the role that I'm in.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Kevin, we obviously work together. I know a lot about the business EnableAll, but for the benefit of everyone else.
Sure. I've been in econ for too many years and I care to count. Started back in the 90s. I've failed disability inclusion and accessibility for almost all my career. Last organisation I was in, as I walked out, they were in their second lawsuit. Not through the lack of fighting and trying, but I did manage to get that lawsuit to a class action, which meant the board finally signed off and getting investment to get it sorted out. And EnableAll came along as an idea and a concept. And what we're doing is we're building a highly accessible AAA standard marketplace, like on by Amazon, no fulfillment, dropship only. It's live, it's trading, 20,000 SKUs out there right now. And for me, several things. One, we've built it from scratch with complete accessibility at the heart of it. It's very simplistic, but we're covering a wider range of problem statements than anybody else. So most people in the digital space cater for sight, blind, visual, deaf. Mobility is not really a major problem. There are a couple of spaces in there, but they don't deal with the rest. Now, of the 14.5 million people who are registered disabled in the country, 8 million of them are in that space. 6 million of them sit in the mobility, sight and deaf. 8 million don't. That's in the neurodiverse space. So we're solving for all those challenges to be as broad a stroke as we possibly can. And why did I do it? Well, it's this built from scratch business. It's all e-com, which I love. And it's an opportunity for me to give back to an industry that I've taken advantage of for 25 years. So 2.5 years, 2 years in from January. It's been the most fun. I'm very fortunate that I'm backed by a care company that's got 5,500 service users that I get to meet. So I get to learn how our end users could be. I now sit on a charity development board in the autism and sight space. So I get to meet their service users as well. It's just been an absolute, the highest learning curve I've had in 25 years, including the first year of doing e-com when no one did e-com. And it's just inspiring. So I love it.
Thank you. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm HR manager at the INKEY list. So we are a global skincare company. So we're in that kind of beauty space. We are still very young. We were founded in 2018. We've grown massively since then. My background is I worked in residential childcare in HR and then in manufacturing. So very, very different. But brought both of those with me to the INKEY list. And the INKEY list's mantra is knowledge powers change. So we keep knowledge at the heart of everything we do, which is a big reason why we're here today as well. We want to learn, we want to help people learn to better ourselves, to better everybody else. So yeah, that's kind of a bit about us.
Thank you. Usman?
Okay, my name is Usman. I'm head of SRE, now work at Dunelm. I've been in tech for about 15 years now, and at Dunelm for about 5 years. Just to give you a bit more background about myself, without going into too much detail, I was born in Pakistan, not the safest of the places over there. And to top that off, I had learning difficulties growing up, which at the time meant you're not working hard enough. Growing up there, I saw political victimization, religious victimization firsthand. Anyway, for a few years, my mum moved back to UK. That's the reason I came. And I was 15 at the time, did not speak any English, had a very adventurous time in schools. I'm sure you can imagine. Anyway, I graduated, started making websites, actually ended up working for a Japanese company, being the only non-Japanese person there, learned a lot about different cultures, how to be inclusive, and also worked in companies where I've been the only non-white person, and they had a lot to learn about diversity and inclusion. Anyway, coming back to Dunelm, we got an amazing tech stack, probably the best in retail. Exactly. And on top of that, it's amazing to see how many people are so much enthusiastic about diversity and inclusion and taking steps to improve those. And for me, I'm just excited that I'm part of that and I can contribute to something I'm really passionate about. That's
Brilliant. Thank you. It's an amazing story. And Leanne?
Yeah, so last but not least, so my name is Leanne Orton. I'm Senior People Partner supporting technology and product at Dunelm. So working with Usman. In terms of my background, so it's predominantly within the people space, over 25 years, way back when I started as a personnel secretary, so very different time, it was very administrative, through to today. And I've worked in a range of different industries purposefully so that I could get that breadth of experience, exposure. And in terms of Dunelm, I've only been here for, just seeing someone from Dunelm Technology, that's to embarrass you there. I've been with Dunelm for about 14 months, and I joined Dunelm purposefully on the back of, I guess, one of my own lived experiences, in the sense that I'm female and of a certain age, and have previously worked in organisations where that diversity, or that certainly the menopause, was not necessarily understood, talked about. And when I saw the opportunity at Dunelm, it was something that is one of the first things I saw kind of on the candidate website. And the rest is history. So I'm not talking about D&I today solely because of my job. Being female, previously working in male-dominated industries, being the only female in a global leadership team, and I don't talk about football. I don't watch football. I've kind of had all of those experiences, but I think for me at the moment, the lived experience that I'm going through, and I've finally found an organisation where I feel so comfortable to talk about the menopause, the impact that it has, and we're just doing so much as an organisation. So, one bit I did miss out, and I do want to get in there. So although I've been in kind of a HR field for the majority of my career, I did step out for about 2 years, midlife crisis. But I went into technology, but I went into a product owner role. So complete out of my comfort zone, went into a completely different environment. It was actually one of the best career moves I've ever made. It just opened my eyes to completely different ways of working, agile mindset. And it was for a European transformation, so I got so much exposure. And then I chose to go back into HR. I thought, one-woman band, I can revolutionise HR, take agile. It's a bit harder than I thought. But yeah, that's kind of my background, really.
So we've got a really diverse set of backgrounds here as well. Usman, by the sounds of things, it looks like even though you had such a challenging start coming over here, you didn't willingly make things easy for yourself either. With some of the businesses that you worked in. Japanese-only business, as you were saying before.
Yeah. But we've got some questions that have been sent in to us already from a number of people that are sat here. Unfortunately, some that couldn't make it as well.
We'll start off with a nice, easy one. Leanne, I'm going to come to you on this one. It's something we were already talking about before, so I'll go with a soft entry into
Which
it.
question did I get?
Can you share some specific initiatives your company's undertaken to promote DEI within the industry?
Within the industry, okay. So we've done a number of things at Dunelm, some more internal, some external. You're going to have to remind me of the question halfway through as well.
That's fine.
So internally, we do have a Women in Tech group. It's something, so in the 14 months that I've been here, it is something that has started to fizzle out, if I'm honest. However, saying that, we're running 2 events this month, one in our Leicester, in this office, one in our London office, to revisit the purpose, try and get that refreshed. We've had guest speakers, we've had female kind of leaders from within our tech community tell us their story. So I guess from an internal perspective, in terms of, and you are going to have to repeat the question again.
Specific initiatives.
Specific
to promote
initiatives.
DEI.
So that's internally that's one of the initiatives. We have a number of colleague networks as well. So which are the colleagues love them. So the colleagues kind of co-chair. They own the groups. They meet on a monthly basis. So we have an LGBTQ plus group. We have a race and diversity. It's race and diversity. Is that the right one? No, diversity and you know what I mean? Disability and neurodiversity. So we've got a number of different groups, which again we try and involve colleagues as much as possible.
And do those groups, do they have like an input into anything within the business or initiatives within the business itself, or?
Yeah, they do. So within technology in particular, probably about 6 months ago, if you're familiar with hackathons, we ran an exercise that was in, I guess, the spirit of a hackathon, but I called it an engageathon. And it was on the back of an engagement survey. And So whereas the leadership team, we'd gone through the results and we'd identified various initiatives or focus areas that we wanted to really hone in on, we chose a few of those areas, and in the same spirit of an engagement hackathon, had an engageathon. So we had colleagues register in teams. One of the areas was diversity and inclusion. They had, I think it was 4 or 5 hours to work on their ideas. They then presented to a panel. Yeah, you were, weren't you? Yeah. It sounds very formal when I say panel, but it wasn't. And yeah, so essentially what came out of it, kind of the winning pitch, is we've got a system that's being developed at the moment to track kind of in the moment feedback or in the moment engagement, so that we understand how colleagues are feeling on a day-to-day basis. And it's a smiley face kind of system. But then some of the stats will go through to their line manager, and if it highlights that an individual has perhaps not been in the best of places maybe for a few days, then it kind of generates a wellbeing conversation. And that was a colleague idea. So we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, get them to kind of come up with the ideas that are value adding and are meaningful. So we can introduce something, but actually it might not have the desired effect. So that's one of the things that we've purposefully done to be more inclusive.
I love that. Megan, if I could come to you. Similar type of question, really, in terms of successful initiatives that have INKEY have driven across the business. Yeah. But if there's any specific impacts that you've seen from that as well, that would be amazing.
Yeah, so we do something very similar in terms of we call it Time to Talk. So we've had guest speakers and awareness sessions on menopause, fertility, Men's Mental Health Month, LGBTQ+. We've done lots of different events from that. And in turn, we have then seen on our Slack channels that people have created groups from that. So we have a group for parents where they can talk about struggles that they're having being parents. We have a group for people who are pet lovers. We have a group for people who have a running club, and a couple of them have just completed a marathon. So from that, it's kind of created smaller groups of people who have something in common and can share things together, which has been huge for us. We've got 3 offices, London, Nottingham, and one in New York. And we've got people from New York, London, and Nottingham all talking together, all sharing their experiences. So it's been huge for us.
That's phenomenal. Jeff, you're working in a large corporate type environment as well.
Yeah.
So the impact of those initiatives that you've seen and that you're putting out there, how have you seen that impact your people?
In the UK, I think we were trailblazers for networks and bringing people together with common aims, and people who identified with other groups and were able to just get some support from their own networks in terms of the journeys that they were going through. So we started in 2019 with Rainbow Net, which was our LGBTQ+ network, and that was aligned with our head office in Bonn. But we then expanded that out into gender and race and ethnicity, and then abilities. Where we've seen a slight difference from a corporate perspective is that we now have that as part of our sustainability strategy. So we have environment, governance and social, and DIB is now sitting very much within that social third of that strategy, which means that there is a lot more interest from a corporate perspective around how are we managing all of these networks, and is there an ability for us to manage these networks in a standardised way? So I think that's a very interesting way to look at it, because I'm not 100% sure that by the very nature of what we do, given that everybody's story is a little bit different and everybody might need something a little bit different, and everybody doesn't necessarily have one size fits all, which is the equity part of DEIB, that perhaps we need to be careful from a corporate perspective that doesn't actually become too standardised, because then you lose the ability to have that freedom for what works in that country. Now, we work across a number of different regions, and we're piloting alliances, which effectively we've taken the Rainbow Net and abilities and said we're going to have employee resource groups as alliances as opposed to a network. And that's because we want to test a proof of concept around structure of those, whether we're able to get more active allies within that environment and therefore provide them with more information, a little bit more, access to material, etc. So that we're in a little bit of a transition stage, but I think that proof of concept is going to carry on for this year and all of next year. And I'm not 100% sure whether the measure of success is necessarily defined or whether it's going to be quite organic. One of the things that we do, however, which has been absolutely driven by our benefits team, is that the increase in the amount of wellness benefits and financial support and a lot of different things within what we call our wellness cloud, where people can get access to information, videos. We've got companies that you can do drop-in conversations on. You almost have a network. So we've got returning mothers, people who are coming back after long-term illness, dealing with bereavement, a lot of different things that you just don't necessarily know where to go to or who to go to. And this cloud that we have available to everybody through the company, through our app, gives them that additional bit of support that perhaps their line manager can't necessarily put his finger on or their finger on in terms of how to support them. So yeah, so
amazing.
Corporately it's an interesting journey when you're in a big machine as to how you want to manage it, because of course DHL have got a number of different divisions.
Yep.
So does freight work in the same way as express, in the same way as supply chain, as the same way as parcels? And I think that's going to be a very interesting journey for us to go through for the next year or so.
That sounds fantastic. Kevin, I'm going to come to you, because you know, it's something that's close to my heart with everything that you're doing within the neurodiverse world, and that sometimes gets overlooked, right, when we talk about diversity and everything. Is there anything that from within that world that you think might be useful for our guests to consider when we're talking about DEI and promoting DEI within technology?
Yeah, I'll share two stories, or one story and one sort of debate I've had since joining this, and then what are we going to do about it? Let me start with that. So I mentioned I work with a charity, and we were down there at their office having a meeting, and just over cups of tea, there was one of the service users at this residence, and as we were talking, he knew, without referencing anything, every route in the country. Oh, someone went to a cricket match. It's down the A42. Oh, someone else went to this, and he knew every route how to drive there. And if you couldn't drive there, he knew the train journey off the top of his head, right? He's quite far on one of the spectrums. Have a normal conversation about the news or anything else. Couldn't hold a conversation. Traffic, routes, driving, beat every one of us, even with our phones. So don't underestimate. But what we've got to do is, I think we talked about this earlier. This was the eye-opener for me, talking to now living and breathing it. And I wish I'd known this 10 years ago. I really do. Again, it's all about spectrums, right? There are a number of people in a particular space and spectrum who are phenomenal at maths and analytics, right? They don't need to be in the team. They don't need to be in the office every day. They don't need to work 9 to 5. With modern day ways of working from home, I wish I'd just thought about having a conversation with someone and opening my eyes up to, you mean I can take all of that data work that everybody else on the team spends 20% of their time doing that they hate, and give it to a couple of people who would love it, and they'd do it better, and everybody's going to be happier, and you could help me make it work. Imagine a world like that. Now, there are programs like that are happening in live today. The charity runs a couple of those programs. I wish I'd thought of this when I was building analytics teams in e-commerce space 10 years ago, because I'd have jumped all over it, particularly having now met those folks. So what are we doing differently? Our biggest challenge internally, so the front end we've got sorted using our own AI and generative modeling and all sorts of other computer technology. These guys are better than I am, where we grade every piece of content, we organise it using AI, we rewrite it if it's too complicated for an end user, and we're figuring out how to do that on the fly. So if you're a graduate, you can have graduate level language. If you're not a graduate, you can have different level language. We're trying to figure out how to do it on the fly because we don't know the content. The biggest challenge we've got is the tools that we've built on, which are not our tools. We're using platforms like most people, and obviously not you guys. You've bespoke built, but we're a startup, so we're using a marketplace platform. We're using a customer data platform. Those platforms aren't accessible to a workforce that are on the spectrums, right? So actually, we've now got commitments from both our core platforms that they'll take some of our technology and build it into the user base to make it AAA, so we can start hiring across the spectrum. We've got to do that first, though. So we've got the challenge on the hiring in this space. Yep. but we've got a plan to deal with it. So the technology we've built for the website that makes it AAA accessible has been built as a plug-in set of technologies. So we're now going to figure out how to plug them into the back office suites to make them as accessible as the front end is for consumers.
So worth me asking the group as well, does everyone understand what AAA means and what that definition is as well? Just, if not, it might be worth. Do you just want to explain
Okay,
in
so
brief what AAA is?
there are a set of guidelines for digital accessibility. Unfortunately, in Europe, the legislation for the last 15 years says make reasonable adjustments. That's the law. If you sell in Europe, be aware, June 2025, law is coming. You have to hit a standard called AA. So there are 3 levels, A, AA, AAA. 98% of all of the IR 500 are A. If you're A, you're illegal in the US, you will get sued. Biggest lawsuit I heard was $7 million fine, right? So you have to be AA in the US. Coming to Europe, June 25. Going from A to A is fairly easy to hit. Most people hit A. Going to AA doesn't actually take that much more effort for your websites and tools. Tools are a lot hard, but your websites, not that much, but you'd have to think a little bit differently. AAA is a chasm, right? AAA is really hard. So you have to build in perceptive, understandable content. Reading language has got to be grade 9 targeted, grade 9 to 14-year-old. Right? And most retailers and sellers employ graduates to write flamboyant copy and marketeers write flamboyant copy. Always too complicated. So AAA is a chasm, but the law is coming for AA. 2 years-ish after that, I anticipate probably 2026, 2027, the next set of guidelines. So we're on what we call WCAG 2.2 at the moment. That's the version we're on. The draft for WCAG 3 is already published. That's the guidelines for accessibility around the planet, and this is global. The global standards. The A, the AA, the AAA is gone, looks like. So it's now not a tick box exercise of do you quite do it. You have to do all of it to a certain level. Neurodiversity is in there. So cognitive reasoning behaviours required to navigate a website, if it's too complicated, you'll fail. So it's going to be very interesting how the US and Europe, and I don't know what the UK is going to do right now, I suspect they'll follow the European eventually. It's going to be very interesting to see where the AA mapping to the new standards of WCAG 3 are going to be. But the story is 98% of websites globally are not accessible to basically about 1 billion people. Globally, Forbes estimate that to be $1.27 trillion of lost sales online globally. And that's a Forbes report. In the UK, Purple Pound report, which has been vetted by the ONS, is £17 billion online sales lost because people can't use your websites. It's a big market.
I think there'll be a few people going back tomorrow to find out what's the plan for 2025. Appreciate that. Usman, if I can come to you, how would you say Dunelm technology addresses unconscious bias to ensure a fair and inclusive hiring process?
Unconscious bias is very difficult, isn't it? I mean, you're being biased without even realizing it. Everyone does that to some extent. And there are a lot of touch points as well. And we've been talking quite a bit on this one. The first place where it starts from is the internal recruiters who are actually being trained on how to be unconsciously biased. That's one of the things that they do. And the other thing is that the ads that we put out, and to make sure that we don't have anything in the language-wise which kind of already excludes a certain group of people, which you could do easily without realizing it again. So again, those recruiters do help us from that perspective as well. Then the next part comes, where do we advertise all of those jobs? Because you do need to be diverse in that to be able to get the right kind of candidates applying for those roles. And when it comes to tech, more specifically, we got Chic and Code. Places like this, we've started advertising on those places as well to attract female engineers applying for us. But you need to go a bit further than that. You need to make yourself open and give them the reason that we are a diverse and inclusive. It's a very friendly place for everyone to come and work. So we're encouraging engineers, anyone in tech, to write blogs and talk about their personal experiences. and got really diverse group of people writing blogs. If you haven't read any of those, do go out and check them. There are some amazing. Leanne has written an amazing one as well. It shows to all the other potential candidates that this is a place I can work. We can all come and join. And now they have applied, the things that we are looking at is how do we make those CVs blank CVs, so removing the names and those kind of things. I know it's not perfect. We were talking about that again, because in a lot of the cases I can tell what background they're from. Is that Asian person, or those by the way they've written the CV and the language they've used, locations of their education, where they study and those kind of things. But at least it's somewhat a lot better than what we have right now. So those are the things that we are working on. After that comes the hiring managers, and we are giving training to all the hiring managers to help them remove the unconscious bias all the way through to the interviewing process. It can be quite tricky. And on top of that, wherever possible, we do try and make the people who are interviewing as diverse as possible. It's very unnerving if you are the female engineer, you go and you got just males in front of you, and it does not look like diverse right from the day one. So these putting all together hopefully will help.
Agree.
It's an iterative process. We do look for feedback. Recruiters do go back and do ask the people who have an interview, even if the answer was not successful, we do try and get as much feedback as possible to make sure that we learn from it and improve. And actually having diverse group of people interviewing was from the feedback of those people who were interviewed by us.
Appreciate that. Is there anything from a people perspective as well that that Dunelm Tech do from an unconscious bias perspective that you've probably got a bit more visibility on maybe compared to Usman?
I think Usman's covered the majority of it. One of it, as he said, one of the main things that we really have encouraged is for all line managers, or hiring managers, it's to make sure that they are comfortable about that kind of unconscious bias during that interview process, and it is a responsibility. I'm not sure if there's anything else specifically, I think, that I would add to it.
No, that's absolutely fine. Jennifer, I wanted to come to you about collecting and analysing data around diversity, and how that data that you may have been able to collect in various ways, how's that impacted and informed any strategy that you've then gone and put in place?
So we have just moved to a new HRIS system, which has allowed us to access data in a much easier way than it did before. So it's an Oracle system, but the previous Oracle system we had was a bit of an add-on to a finance system. So therefore it wasn't necessarily the HR data in the way that you would want to get HR data. So we're now able really easily to be able to get data on representation throughout our workforce. So we can do work which tells us what the representation, what the demographics is of the site, and then look further up and say, well, what's the demographics of the management team? Yep. And does the demographics of the management team represent the people that they have, that they're managing? And we've got enough of the data to be able to do that from a ethnicity perspective, gender perspective, age perspective, so that generational, conversation I think that we also need to have about people coming into the workplace and actually expecting having a very different work ethic than perhaps the people that are managing them, and then potentially the kind of tension that can have. But we use that data to help us understand where there are gaps. So is there a particular issue in a site where we can see that we have an engagement issue? So they've got particularly low engagement scores, which we take from our annual employee opinion survey. Does anything else match with that? So as an example, we operate one of our businesses in patient transport services, and one of the sites was predominantly from an employee perspective, black. The management team were 100% white. And there was very little understanding of the journey that people went on, the experiences they had, the experiences they'd lived, the pressures they were under. And the operations director, you know, was kind of like, we could see that there was a bit of a problem, the way things that work out, either people decide to exit the business or they move and do something else. But the general manager was replaced by a black general manager who turned things round almost instantaneously, not by doing anything particularly spectacular, but just by being someone that they could say, I see someone like me.
Yep.
Or I can see someone who I can relate to, who can relate to my challenges, who can relate to my story, and therefore who can relate to what I need from them to be able to do my job. So whilst that, I wouldn't say that's kind of it's not typical of a lot of our managers, because a lot of our managers do have are very capable in terms of supporting the engagement and the culture of their sites. And that particular example, it was a very stark example of where it just wasn't where it needed to be. So we take our data from the system in terms of people that are in our business, and we also have data that we can take from our resourcing platform to help us understand who is applying for jobs, what's the demographic of the people that are applying for jobs, and then what is the demographic of the people who are going from application stage to interview stage to offer. And is there a disconnect somewhere along the line with there? One of the things that we know is that if you are in an underrepresented group, you are more likely to say that you want to tick 75% of the boxes to be able to apply for a job. And we've turned that on its head a little bit, and our adverts almost say, you might not think you fit the whole criteria, but why don't you let us make that decision? Just come and talk to us about the job, and then we can have a conversation about whether actually we think, do you know what, you should apply for this job, you should come and meet this team, because we think you have something that you can offer to us. It's one of those things where, you know, if you've got a man and a woman, I would be likely to go, I need a bit of development before I can do that.
Stats do show that.
Man would go, just show me it when I get the job. Teach me how to do it when I get the job. It's absolutely fine. Yeah. And by the way, could you give me a 10% rise for that? We wouldn't ask. We'd go, thank you very much. And, well, do you think you could maybe have a look at my salary? No. Okay.
I'll be doing.
Yeah.
That's
what I've been doing wrong all my life as well.
But no, the stats do show that.
The stats, you just have a level of confidence, and whether it's about your own inbuilt, the way you go about doing things, or your culture, or how you, but probably more to do with your lived experience of potentially being told that you're not necessarily good enough to do that. And therefore, if you're told that often enough, then that's what you believe. And that will follow you through. It's the same with, you know, social mobility, you know, kids from underprivileged backgrounds who will not think they can get a job in logistics. We brought in this year as many apprentices as we did graduates. Degree level apprenticeships for kids who can't afford to go to university or don't find that academic life suits them. But with our business, they will come out with a degree at the end of that, and a very successful career in logistics, which can be a very lucrative career in logistics. And everybody always wants something shipped. So it's highly unlikely to be, you know, it's quite a secure career as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think
lots of things that we do with that baseline data that allows us to be curious. We have a lot of people in our business who are really curious about what it says. I think that's part and parcel of my job. Is actually, well, what is that telling me? So what? And because I am quite curious or nosy or whatever it is, I dig into it, and then we might find just a little chink of something that we hadn't thought about before. And what might we do a little bit differently, and let's just see how it works. And fortunately, I work in a business that is quite happy to take some of those risks. And I think it pays dividends in the end.
I agree. I think with the way diversity society is changing as well, where that traditional university education route, it's not as strong as it used to be over the last decade or so as well, especially post-COVID. And now more and more people are going and look at other options an earlier phase of their life.
It's so expensive. I have a privilege in that I had a free education. Because I had a free education, because I didn't pay tuition fees, I'm not that, didn't do tuition fees when I went to university. But I had a free education effectively. Because I had a free education, my daughter has the privilege of being able to go to university because I could help her get to university. Yeah. So therefore that privilege has gone through a generation. So therefore that privilege will go through another generation, because when she has children, she's had that university education, will have that career, will be able to support her child through university if that's what she used to do. If you've never been able to do that for your kids, then where do they get that education? Where do they get that equal opportunities to be able to get on and do well, just because they haven't got the financial backing to be able to do it?
Yeah, completely agree. Megan, I'm going to come to you on your thoughts around the future of DEI as a topic overall. It'd be interesting to hear what might be in the works at the INKEY list as to what you're going to do to try and tackle this as a topic and then improve things.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a social impact and sustainability team. So their whole role is they work with our partners. So we have one amazing partner called Rekindle, who are a supplementary school for children from a working class background who wouldn't necessarily thrive in normal education. They are taught life skills and CV writing and interview skills, and we are looking at doing a mentorship program so they can come into our offices, sit with different teams and see what departments they like and where they would fit in. We know that, like we were saying, not everyone would go to university and go through that path. So we want to give people that option of seeing that you don't have to go through that. We have lots of apprentices, lots of interns. We like to kind of mix it up and not just have people who have come from uni and have that background. For us, it's huge. DE&I is massive, and we're really passionate about it. We're still really small, but we're incredibly passionate. It's at the heart of everything we do. We have so many initiatives to take it on. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to stop in terms of how fast we're going to cover it and to make sure that everything we do, it stays at the heart.
Brilliant, thank you. So we started intros at that end. I'm just keep conscious of time, and there may be a few questions from the group as well. And I know there's some networking time afterwards as well. So Leanne, I'm going to start with you. If there was one, I'm going off topic on this one a little bit as well, or off script, shall we say. If there's one bit of advice that you could give the group as that this would be the most impactful thing from everything that you see and experience within Dunelm Tech, what, in a short, succinct thing, what would that look like for you? What would that be? Your one bit of advice?
Work with your colleagues to understand what would really add value and make an impact for them. So not only is it being inclusive, but as an organisation, you can probably work on 1,000,001 different initiatives with the right intent to do, to make it as inclusive a work kind of or an environment as possible. But actually, that corny kind of phrase, co-create, but work with your colleagues and listen to them, and give them responsibilities as well to work with you to drive things forward. So that is, for me, has been a key focus this year, I think. Do you agree?
Completely.
Yeah, good.
I was going to say, Usman, you can't copy what Leanne said, so over to you. What's your one best bit of advice?
Okay, so yesterday, actually, I was talking to SRE, Agile Delivery Lead, Hannah, and she mentioned that imagine going into a store, seeing someone with Down syndrome working there. If that does not put a smile on your face, I don't know what will. It's very difficult sometimes to look past the differences and is focusing on what's common between us and focusing on the strengths. So if there's one thing that we should take away, focus on that. That's my one advice.
Brilliant.
On top of it.
A little bit of that added in. Megan, over to you. What's your one best bit of advice?
Mine would be to listen to the team. So our engagement survey, one of the key questions we ask is, do you feel that you belong? And that's incredibly important to us, that we want everyone to feel that they belong in the business. And if they don't, we want to know why. We need to change that. We want everyone to feel they belong. So yeah, listen to your teams. That's where all the information comes from. They know best. So yeah, that would be mine.
Brilliant, thank you. Kevin, aside from facilitating class action lawsuits, what are yours?
I'm asking for a 10% rise. Notes taken. I as a starter, we up until April this year, we were one employee, right? So that's how fresh a starter we are. We're now at 5, so I don't have half these problems yet. I think for me, we've talked about this. is our sort of all the way from no job descriptions, because we hate them. How do we advertise and hire correctly with this in mind? So I think we need to finish our scorecarding off. So we're going to generate a scorecard for all the things we do, and it takes away all of the thought process away from everybody who's got a department, essentially. So there are 4 criteria for hiring and advertising on. Can you do the job is only one of them. And we're focusing then, the rest of the other 3 are going to be on, do you bring balance to the team and the company? Do you tick the D&I boxes? Which ones do you, because obviously for us, high on the disability space or lived experience is really big. And then do you fit culturally? So those 3 are going to be basically written for you. You only have to write the one about, can you do the job? And it won't be you making a singular decision. It's going to be a group of people making a decision, because balance, fit and culture and all those other things. And that's how we're going to bring back, balance for me is ultimate. I've lived in the retail space too many times where it has been, certain businesses, particularly in e-commerce, male-dominated decision-making trees. And if you're working in a female brand, that makes life really hard, right? Actually, having a diverse spectrum of voices on there, you do get a better outcome. You do sell more stuff. Your websites do work better. So balance and fit are really important for me. So that's what we're going to do. Is right from the advertising through the hiring is a singular scorecard that everybody in the organisation works for. So we've got to get that done to get the next hires right.
Perfect. And finally, Jennifer?
I think I would just not underestimate the power of allyship and active allyship. So being brave enough to call out poor behaviour, or being brave enough to disrupt and challenge the status quo. The biggest moves that we made forward for our networks was when we had that allyship and people felt really comfortable to be able to support what was going on and to attend webinars or any events that we might have had. And I think the smallest of gestures can actually make the biggest of impacts. It doesn't need to be a massive event. It doesn't need to be a huge campaign. What we talk to our leaders about is the fact that they cast a long shadow, and the smallest act that they can do, particularly if they are an ally and an active ally, will make a huge difference in our business in terms of how we progress along our DEIB journey.
Fantastic, thank you. But I think the obvious thing that most people agree with, right, is that it's just the right thing to do when we're talking about promoting diversity, especially in the world of tech. Unfortunately, in the world of business, there is often, to try and get things through or push things through or get businesses on board, you often also have to provide some sort of tangible benefit, whether that's financial, profitable, whether that's in the world of recruitment, as so many people are here, where they talk about, I think there was a study done in about 21 where they said 78% of prospective employees value those businesses greater that show a greater disposition towards DEI as well. So that's huge. And as I said, that societal kind of thought process is shifting as well. But I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone on the panel here today. We've come from all over the country, different journeys, different train issues, driving issues, traffic issues as well. But a massive thank you to the panel, a massive thank you to yourselves for taking time, a couple of hours in the evening on a Thursday evening. It's been an amazing conversation to have this evening. So thank you so much.
Thank you.